it's really important to be like giving to other people, to always be helping. And I think that's one of the big things that my parents have really imparted in me. Like, my parents are pretty frugal, but they always say that when you save more, you have more to give, you know? And so I think that's just one of the really big, important things about like our family and our values.
Welcome to Wealth Coherence. I'm your host, Emily Bouchard, a social worker specializing in human development and fascinated by human potential. For over 20 years, I've been a coach to families with successful businesses and leaders with successful careers. And you may be surprised to learn that true wealth is about coherence. When our inner state of being aligns with how we live, give, lead, and love. In this series, we will explore an integrated model to flourish coherently, because wealth isn't what we have, it's who we are when we are fully aligned. Well, welcome to this edition of Wealth Coherence, where I have two guests. I'm so thrilled to get to introduce you to Deb Liu and Bethany Liu. And they write a column on money and family values. And I'm so thrilled to have you here. You presented at a conference about this. Bethany is 16-year-old senior. Deb is the former CEO of Ancestry. Like, they come with so much wisdom and knowledge, and they write a column that they can tell us more about. And just wanted to get a chance to talk to you about, like, what had you start writing a column about your approach to money and your family?
Yeah, so the column actually originally started with an essay contest for the Chinese American Museum in DC. And the prompt was bridging the gap between generations. So I originally was actually writing with my grandmother, and I was asking her about her story and all the things she had learned. And I realized that there was just so much I didn't know about her. And I really wanted to like continue doing this. So I pitched the idea of in a column where we kind of discuss issues to ASAM News. And right as we were about to publish our first article, unfortunately, my grandmother suddenly passed away. And so I I asked mom if she was willing to continue with me because my grandmother had just taught me so much about the power of communicating with other people. And every month we come with like a different topic, and money is like a big thing with our family. So it is something that sits in every single article we write.
Oh my gosh, Bethany, would you be willing to share something you learned from your grandmother? That's so wonderful that you had that foresight to have those kinds of conversations with her when you did. I'm so glad you shared that right out the gate, because it's something I'm super passionate about in terms of don't wait to have these conversations. You never know. And how beautiful that you had that time with her. And, we'd love to hear it, because it'd be wonderful to have her legacy be something we can share with everyone.
Yeah, I think one of the big things I learned from her was just she was just so overwhelmingly like grateful at all the opportunities she'd been presented. I remember one of the questions I asked her while I was like interviewing her for this essay was, have people ever treated you unfairly in America? And I know from my dad that people have treated her unfairly in the past, but all she said was, America's been so amazing. It's been incredible here. She just exuded gratefulness like every time she spoke.
Isn't that something? So even though you knew that there were some hard stories that she had to face, she really wanted you to know how much she was grateful for being here. That says something. Wow. What is it that you got to learn more about because you had more conversations with her?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was really just her story. So I don't speak very good Chinese, and her English was good, but it was not perfect, you know? And so we definitely struggled to communicate a lot. So I just never got the chance to learn all of those stories until for the first time we were working on this essay together. And like finally I learned her stories, I got to see her perspective, and I was really excited to apply that to this new column.
That's such a good point, right? Because this cross-generational thing in and of itself can be challenging, right? Because we have different ways of communicating, like texting versus phone versus in person versus, how we articulate things. There's new different words that are being used now to express things that, older generations like, what does that mean? And then you bring in another language, and that's a whole other barrier. And wow, you really put in a lot of effort to make sure that you got to connect with her around what mattered to her. So it sounds like gratitude was an important value of hers. What would you all say are some of the other values that you have in your family that have really guided you, especially around your money?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that as Christians, it's really important to be like giving to other people, to always be helping. And I think that's one of the big things that my parents have really imparted in me. Like, My parents are pretty frugal, but they always say that when you save more, you have more to give, you know? And so I think that's just one of the really big important things about like our family and our values.
Deb, what would you add about where that came from? That's like so beautiful. What
Yeah.
a wonderful motto to have as a family.
So recently we did a fireside chat at the JP Morgan event, and they asked what is our values, and Bethany said generosity and frugality, and I think she's right, which is it's a mix of both of those things, right? Generous with
Mhm.
others, but also making sure that you have a lot to give to others as well.
Yeah, the more that you're mindful of the money that you have and how you're using it and much you let it grow versus spending it, the more you do have to give. And oh, I'd love to hear a story from each of you in terms of meaningful memory of the first time that you either received a gift or financially that really made an impact, or when you gave one that had an impact.
I think definitely one of the things is that a lot of the stuff we give isn't just money. Like ever since I was a kid, we've always done this thing called Operation Christmas Child, where mom will get all these plastic boxes and fill them up with stuff to give to children as like Christmas presents. And it's been really, really great. We've done it ever since I was a little kid. And our whole like front doorway is just covered in box upon box. And I remember my brother used to have to like drive the boxes off to the drop-off location. But that's just one of the things that I think really underpins like our family and our values. It's like saving all of this stuff so that we can like give more away.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we talk about experiences over things. And so rather than do like an expensive Christmas present, we'll do Secret Santa. So you draw two names, and then your cap is only $25 per person. And so you get two gifts, and that's it. I mean, you give two gifts, but we kind of play around with it where you're sneaking, you have allies, and you try to, if you can pair off with the person and figure out who else also has that name, you can do. So it's a fun little game we do. And then we kind of do one big trip together. So instead of doing kind of a bunch of things, we really want to focus on experiences. So we do like one international trip a year, and again, it's about the experience. We do fly basic economy because one of the things I do want kids to understand is there are trade-offs. There's not just infinite pool of money you're drawing from, but you're choosing. And so we showed them the plane tickets to Taiwan. We went to Taiwan this summer. We showed the tickets and we said, look, and they're like, it's $400 difference for each ticket. That's a lot of money. And so we talked about the trade-offs of what that means. And they said, okay, well, in exchange, can we just go to the night market, more often? And I'm like, you can't spend more than $10 eating at the night market, by the way, per person. I'm like, sure, absolutely. I think often people protect their kids from understanding what opportunity costs are because they don't think they'll understand it. But they do understand it at a much younger age than you think they do.
Well, yeah, and that's such a great way to look at the giving part too, right? Like, oh wow, if we saved, I don't know, were there four of you that went to Taiwan, or were there
Five of us,
more?
yeah.
Five. So what, five times 400? That's is that
Yeah,
$1,000? Am I
2000, yeah,
totally
$2,000. So it's a substantial amount
2,000?
of money.
Yeah, it's $2,000, right? And it's like, wait, if we don't spend that $2,000 on the plane tickets and we're a little bit uncomfortable on the plane because of it, does that mean that we have $2,000 to give to something that we really care about? Yeah, we have that as an option. Or maybe we'll put it in the funds for education because we want you to go to the best school you can and it's really expensive. Like there's like different to understand that. And I do like that idea of not necessarily sheltering the children from the opportunity costs and how you make your decisions financially, because that's really helping them understand how they have to go about making decisions when they become adults too.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like we have this rule on money, which is show don't tell. You can tell them what your values are, but you have to show them every single day. And I remember recently I was telling the story, recounting the story. The kids were like, I think the older two were 4 and 6, so our youngest is probably about 2. And we were eating lunch with our friends, and their kids ordered a drink. And I remember my son saying, they ordered a drink. Didn't they know that water is free? And then Bethany says, yeah, and if you can get a lemon, there's sugar on the table, you can just make your own lemonade. And I just remember thinking it's a proud parent moment, but also super embarrassing for them to say that in front of our friends. And so, but again, we don't order drinks at restaurants. Like that's just not something we've ever done. And it was just, it's a moment where your values are lived through the choices that you make. And again, whatever you set up, they were very small. They didn't And the kids have never, they carry water bottles everywhere, so don't buy bottled water. Like there's just a whole system that you set up around your life, and you just assume that the world is the same. And so I think from a young age, just helping kids understand that this is our family values. This is the choices that we make. The kids do have a weakness for boba. We say it's a sometimes food. But it is important to understand, hey, that is a choice. We're going to proactively choose when we go, and here's what we're going to do. Although they still get upset that I make them share the boba.
Oh, oh no, no, they have different flavors that they like. But I think that that's so because then it makes it so it is special when you get it. And it's not something that you just expect or feel like you should have every time you want it. And then that tastes even better, right? I think that there's something that we lose when it just you give this carte blanche to anything you want whenever you want it. And I was working with a family. We were doing their purpose statement and we were looking at their values. And the youngest, their son, he was really passionate. And he was like, when we were in the south of France this summer, it was such an amazing trip because they invest in trips. And he said, it was such an amazing trip, but my God, the young people there, they were so entitled and they were just awful to be around. He's like, I want humility to be one of our family values. And it was like, wow. And it took the shock of going to a place where he was around people where they didn't have these kind of values instilled to have him articulate how much it meant to him that they not be perceived or and he's like, I'm thinking about my kids. Like, I want to be successful and I don't want my kids to behave like that. And here he is 19 years old and he's like, and I'm like, oh, this is a good place to start. Yeah. And so you have frugality and generosity. You had that wonderful quote about the more you take care of your money, the more you have to give. Any other values that you weave in or incorporate into your money that would be good for us to know about?
I think those are the primary values.
It's a good summary. I do
Yeah.
think one of the things we do though is, when the whole show don't tell, it's like transparency around helping kids understand trade-offs, opportunity costs. Bethany's taking economics now, and she jokes that she's heard a lot of those concepts from me. And I said, like, I want you to understand, like, what does it mean, like compound interest? How do you think about, like, what is investing for the future versus spending today? How do we think about assets and things like that? And so I do think helping them understand from a young age, I feel like we shelter our kids and actually think that that's benefiting them, when actually more transparency, more openness, telling them, hey, you can choose A or B, but B comes with this and A comes with this. And, we could do X trip, but we can't do Y. And so we do have those conversations. And I think that transparency does help because they're able to now make decisions on their own as well.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Bethany, is there anything that you've experienced around money with your friends that would be good for us to know about too? Like I think that lemonade story was fantastic, but like where you've been out with your friends shopping or doing something fun, but where you either educated them in a way that they weren't aware or you observed something that's like, oh, they do something very different than I would. Anything like that? Or
Yeah, I actually don't really have a story like that, which I think is really interesting because I think one of the things that I unconsciously do is I'm attracted to people who have like similar values, like the ones my parents instilled in me. So like I went out to eat with my friends and we all ordered like similar things. I shared a meal with my friend because we were like, this is a big meal, super expensive. Why don't we just share it? And so like I spend a lot of time with like people who like have these same like family cultures, where they also value generosity and frugality. And it's really, really nice to like, especially in a place like Palo Alto where we live, where it's like everything, like all around you see a bunch of Teslas, you see a bunch of McMansions. It's like, it's really nice to like have people who have these similar values here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And this show is about wealth coherence. And I think what you're describing too is when you have that level of coherence internally, right, where you're living from your values and you're expressing them and how you act in the world, you are going to attract and be attracted to people that resonate at that same coherence, at that same frequency, right? It's kind of like music when you have harmony happening with the different instruments. And it's like, you're just described that so beautifully. And it makes for a really coherent experience of life, right? You're going to have a lot of ease in your relationships with your friends, and you're going to have fun sharing meals, and you're not going to have to deal with that kind of frictiony stuff that happens when somebody has like a judgment. Or, I mean, I just remember like somebody making a comment about my very first Patagonia jacket my grandparents gave me when I got a job at an outdoor education school. And I'm like, I need all weather gear. And then we went and we found this thing on sale, and my grandparents were really excited to get it for me. And I was so thrilled. And then somebody made this like, ooh, Patagucci comment. And all of a sudden it like tainted my experience of like the generosity of my grandparents and having something that was going to keep me really warm when I was working outside. And in that moment I thought, oh, there's a values clash here in terms of like what the perception was and like how I wanted to be perceived. And it's an interesting thing. Like just one little comment from somebody can have such an impact. So I'm glad that you have friends of the same ilk that you have.
Well, I just recently read an article about, have you ever seen the metronomes? The metronomes start like they tick in different, and then eventually they kind of go in sync. Because what happens is they're moving the platform slightly, which then feeds into the other metronomes, and they're now ticking in sync. And this article says, show me your five best friends, and I'll show you who you are. And it's like, are you in a community where, and one thing about raising kids in a community where people are fairly well off is, there are 20 Teslas in the half mile between school and home. And, I drive a $2,000 car, which I love. It's like 15 years old. My Hyundai is amazing. And someday Bethany will be driving it. And, it is kind of like the running joke amongst my friends that I drive a $2,000 car. But I think the bigger thing, though, is that, these are our values, right? It still runs. It's very reliable. Like, why do we need another car when, we can continue to drive it? And so I do think, having a community where you feel like you can be yourself, whether it's, it's okay to keep your car for 15 years. And, that's not the highest value. Like here, it's having her have friends where, they have those same values as well.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Well, it's so wonderful to get to hear your experiences. And, how was it for you, Bethany, speaking at the fireside at JP Morgan? Was that, what was it like to be sharing your perspective with other people that were going to learn from you in that way?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit scary, but it was actually really interesting. And it was like such an exciting opportunity too. Because I think, um, there's a lot of family values that, I personally think our family values are the best values, which, I don't trust anyone who doesn't think that their family values are the best values. But yeah, I think it was just really, really great to have the opportunity to just share like what I believe and what Mom believes with everyone there.
Yeah. And we've had the chance to speak at the Asian American Museum and the ASIM conference, ASIM News Conference. And so it is interesting to hear the different perspectives and also the kinds of questions that come up as well.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that you've done in your family is you've really codified your values, right? You speak them, you live them, you can articulate them. It's so fun that, Bethany says, oh, generosity and frugality. And you're like, oh yeah, that is exactly what it is. It's like, oh, it's embedded in us. And I think that families that take the time to do that and really embody it, it makes it so that those values live on. And I just think about your grandmother, Bethany, that we started off this conversation, and a lot of this came from her, right? So it's like when we embody our values and we really have that coherence with them, they last, and that's part of the legacy. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to read your column. I'm so thrilled. We'll definitely put it in the show notes so people know how to find it.
Great, and thank you for inviting us.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wealth Coherence. If it resonated, I'd love for you to share it or leave a review. This will help others find their way to this space. And if you're ready to keep exploring what it means to live, lead, and give from a place of coherence, head to emilybouchard.com to stay connected. Until next time, be well internally and allow your external life to be the fullest expression of who you truly are.